Wei Bi, in the original work, played the role of soy sauce. Bai Bai learned the unique skills of the Zhu Wu family, but used them to please the Snow Ridge Shuangshu. He also coveted the wealth of the two families, which determined his development. After Rebirth, possessing invincible internal skills, Zhu Wu and his two families fully utilized their unique skills, dominating the martial arts world and surpassing the others. Drive out the Yuan soldiers and establish a political power belonging to the Han people, with the responsibility of benefiting the people of the world. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The north wind howls and the snow is white. On the steep cliff of Kunlun Mountain where the Queen Mother of the Western Heaven ascended to heaven, a young man of 6 or 7 years old grabbed the protruding stones on the cliff with both hands. He was covered in injuries, with several bloodstains on his hands, and several cuts in his fox fur coat. It seems that this young man is a wealthy young man, playing by the cliff and accidentally rolling down. Fortunately, the terrain here was quite gentle, and the young man had also practiced martial arts for a period of time. He took the opportunity to grab the exposed stone and stabilize his figure. The fierce wind was howling, and the cold wind was piercing. The boy's hands were numb from the cold, and with injuries on his body, he could no longer hold on to the stones and continue to roll down. If you say this young man is really lucky, falling less than 3 feet high again would be a big platform. This young man is worthy of falling on the platform. Exhausted, injured, and frightened, the young man fainted. After an unknown amount of time, several little monkeys suddenly appeared on the platform. When they saw the boy lying on the ground, they ran over and curiously tugged at his clothes and hair. "Oh, I'm freezing to death. Where is this?" Wei Bi opened his eyes, but was startled by the monkeys beside him. "Oh my, where did the monkey come from?" A few little monkeys heard the roar of the guard wall and were so scared that they all ran back to the cave entrance. "I just have a fever in COVID-19, and I can still be saved. Don't throw me into the ice and snow to cool down, can I?" Wei Bi felt the temperature of the surrounding environment, and saw that the place where he lay was on the edge of a cliff, which made his legs and feet sore in a moment, and then climbed a few steps toward the platform. "Ha! Why is my body so small?" Wei Bi realized as he moved his body that he was already a big man with a tiger back and a bare waist, but now he has become a child with thin arms and legs. When COVID-19 arrived, Wei Bi, 30, was unlucky to hit the target. At night, he measured his temperature and had a high fever of 40 degrees. He quickly ate an expensive ibuprofen capsule and fell asleep. Unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes again, I came to this icy and snowy land, and my body turned into a child. At this moment, Wei Bi suddenly had a splitting headache, and another person's memory rushed into his mind. After some integration, Wei Bi fully accepted the child's memory. Wei Bi, with the same name as himself, is the nephew of Zhu Chongling, the two masters of Zhu Wu Lianhuan Manor, and the disciple of Wu Lai. Although only 7 years old, he has already started learning the unique skills of the Zhu Wu family. Today, Wei Bi climbed the mountain with his cousin Zhu Jiuzhen and junior sister Wu Qingying to enjoy the snow, but he never expected to slip and fall off the cliff. "It seems that I have died of a fever, and my soul was sent to the heaven-reliant world by the heavens. Just why not Zhang Wuji, who has a protagonist aura and is a simple and honest handsome guy, or Song Qingshu from the Wudang sect with a strong background? Why is it the little Karami guard wall? Why is the sky so unfair?" Lying on the platform for half a day, Wei Bi felt both cold and hungry. "Forget it, take it easy as you come. If you fall here, you might freeze to death soon, and then your soul will float back." Wei Bi wrapped himself in fur, then sat up and looked around. He found that this was a 3 square large platform halfway up the cliff, bare and without anything. He couldn't see the top from above and the bottom from below. At this moment, the noise of monkeys came from the cliffs and the base of the platform. The guard wall looked over and found a hole there. Kunlun Mountains, cliffs, platforms, and caves. These words flashed through Wei Bai's mind one after another. Is this the platform that Zhang Wuji dropped off from back then? Is that the cave entrance where he found the 9 Yang scripture? Wei Bai suddenly felt a little relieved that he had fallen off a cliff. Seeing that the cave entrance is not large, the body of the guard wall is still very spacious as it penetrates. I couldn't see all the way inside at a glance, not sure if the cave entrance was too deep or if it was winding and winding. The guard wall pondered for a moment, but let it go and take a look inside. The guard wall crawled towards the cave, and the chattering monkeys in front of it seemed like navigation, guiding the direction. Fortunately, the guard wall at this time was only 7 years old, and climbing in the cave was very smooth. If the guard wall had reached adulthood, it would probably be like Zhu Changling, stuck in the cave and unable to enter and exit. In no time, Wei Bai climbed to the other end of the cave, where the sun was shining brightly outside. The cave entrance was only about 10 feet high from the ground, so he jumped directly to the ground. Although there is only one mountain separated, the scenery on both sides is very different. The cold wind outside the valley is piercing, and the north wind howls. However, this valley is warm like spring, with birds singing and flowers fragrant, and the scenery is pleasant. The monkeys were not afraid as they looked at the guard wall. They were watching the outsiders from not far away, with 7 or 8 wild goats running around inside. It seems that there are no fierce beasts around here, otherwise they wouldn't have been vigilant. Wei Bai followed the monkey's noise and walked towards the inside. About 2 miles away, Wei Bai discovered a waterfall cascading down from the steep cliff in front of him. It was believed that the snow on the cliff had melted under the sunlight and then merged together, rushing out of a cliff to form a waterfall. The waterfall rushed down and formed a pool of water at the base of the cliff. There are fish swimming back and forth in the pond, probably because there are no natural enemies. The fish grow up to about feet long. Wei Bai is certain that this is where Zhang Wuji obtained the 9 Yang scripture. It seems that the heavens are not lenient towards him. For the sake of his own face, Wei Bai, as a cannon fodder, has a chance to obtain the 9 Yang scripture. Once you come, be content with it. At this point, Wei Bai was already starving. Oh, what big peaches! After walking for a long time, Wei Bai suddenly saw a fruit tree ahead, covered in peaches, each one red and tempting. Let's eat a few peaches first to replenish our energy. Wei Bai found the lowest tree, climbed up, picked 4 or 5 peaches, and then jumped off the tree branch while holding them, sitting under the tree to taste. Well, it's sweet and juicy, both quenching thirst and satisfying. Wei Bai ate all these peaches in one breath. This valley is not big, and living alone is enough. It can be considered a paradise. Chapter 2. Jiuyang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The deep valley is warm like spring. Wei Bai was resting overnight in the cave, covered in fur, without feeling the cold. The next day, when Wei Bai woke up, he was full of energy. However, he couldn't go up or down in this valley, which made Wei Bai suddenly idle. Seeing a few little monkeys playing around, Wei Bai, who had nothing to do, decided to release his playful nature and quickly climbed up to chase each other. After all, his current body was a 7-year-old child, and it was normal for him to enjoy playing. During the chase and playfulness, a little monkey stepped on a dead branch, which broke off. The little monkey also fell to the ground and howled in sorrow. Oh, little thing, why are you so careless? Wei Bai was playing with them, but to his surprise, the little thing fell to the ground. He quickly jumped to the ground and came to the little monkey's side to check his injuries. With the playful scene just now, the little monkey is not afraid of the wall, just lying down and howling. Did you break your leg, right? Wei Bai was a male engineer before his rebirth, but he didn't know anything about medicine. He only knew how to do simple bandaging. He took a few wooden sticks, folded them into a slightly shorter length than a monkey's leg, and then tore off a few pieces of his personal clothing to tie them up. The little monkey has a bit of spirituality, just watching as the guard wall bandages him and stops moving and barking. Watching his own masterpiece bulging up, Wei Bi felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, there was no one else here, otherwise he would have been laughed at to death. After all, it's not professional. After tying it up a few times, the bandage was bulging and I really couldn't bear to look at it directly. Let's just make do with it. Wei Bi patted the little monkey and pointed to its leg. The little monkey seemed to understand and stood up to leave, but the injured leg remained lifted and didn't land. For several consecutive days, this monkey did not appear. However, Wei Bi was so bored that he had to practice his orchid brushing hands several times according to his memory. At this time, Wei Bi was still young and had just gained some internal strength, so Wu Lai only taught him a set of orchid brushing hands and some lightness skills. After learning them, Wei Bi quickly led Ling Shuangshu out and showed off in front of them, which led to the disaster of falling off the cliff. This is the unique skill of Peach Blossom Island. Wu Xiuwen was once a disciple of Jing and Huang Rong, and was able to pass it on. However, he was not proficient in learning, but he recorded the key points in every aspect. At this moment, when Wei Bi saw the stone wall, a large white ape turned around, with white hair and a small monkey that had been injured a few days ago in his arms. He held a large peach in his left hand. Great White Ape, you have finally arrived. Seeing the great white ape on the wall was even more exciting than seeing the most beautiful woman in the martial arts world, Daikasi. The great white ape came to the wall and sat down on the ground, then pointed to the wound on its abdomen. Upon inspection by Wei Bi, a large lump bulged in its abdomen, and the wound at the suture site had suppurated, emitting a foul odor. These two bastards. In order to seize the 9 Yang scripture, they actually harmed you. Wei Bi comforted the great white ape while cursing Xiaoxiangzi and Yin Keshi. Xiao Xiangzi and Yin Keshi, in order to hide the 9 Yang scripture, actually cut open the belly of the Tsang ape, wrapped the 4 Lenka sutras in oilcloth, and sewed on the belly. This caused Jiuyang and Zhang Junbao to search their entire bodies without finding any trace. Until the 2 people died, they were unable to retrieve those 4 scriptures. The poor ape, carrying 4 scriptures, lived in Kunlun Mountain for decades and became a great white ape, with occasional abdominal wounds. Wei Bi found a sharp stone, cut through the wound of the great white ape, wrapped it in oilcloth, and quickly helped it scrape off the carrion from the wound. What if there is no needle or thread? Yes, the leftover thorns from eating fish yesterday can be used as needles. What about the thread? Liang Fa found the bark he had ignited before, tore off a layer, and slowly split it into thin threads. The great white ape's wound is to be treated by the guard wall, and it is instructed not to move around before the wound grows. The great white ape nods its head in a human-like manner. Wei Bi opened the oilcloth bag and saw 4 scriptures stacked inside. Opening the first book, I found that the main scriptures were written in Sanskrit, with some luck techniques written in small regular script between the lines. Wei Bi is a modern person who originally did not understand how to operate true qi. Fortunately, in Wei Bai's memory, Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai taught him the method of luck. So, Wei Bi settled down in the deep valley and practiced the 9 Yang manual with peace of mind. Wei Bi knows that when practicing the 9 Yang manual, he should be calm, otherwise his progress will be affected. Time passes unnoticed in the mountains, and half a year has passed quietly in the human world. Wei Bi focused on practicing martial arts, but did not pay attention to time. The sun rises and sets, and the stars move with each passing moment. After practicing 3 books of the 9 Yang manual, Wei Bi felt that his true energy was about to break through his body, and there was no other way. He had to remember the 4th book in his heart first, and then practice the content of the 4th book after his true energy was sorted out. After practicing these 3 books, the internal power of the Wei wall is already limited in the martial arts world. During his practice on the wall, the great white ape completely took over the role of his nanny and automatically arranged for the little monkey to bring him a big peach. This big peach is sweet and juicy, and after eating it, it feels refreshed, which saves Wei Bi the time to search for food and allows him to focus on comprehending the 9-yang manual. Wei Bi doesn't know when it is outside now, and whether Zhang Cuishan and others have returned to the Central Plains. Bury the 9-yang scripture, mark it, and then wrap it in the clothes you brought. Wei Bi is preparing to leave this place and find his way back. Brother Monkey, you stay here. When I'm tired of the life in the martial arts world, I'll come find you. How about our two brothers living together? Wei Bi patted the belly of the great white ape and said. There is no way. Wei Bi was only 7 years old when he arrived here. Although he has grown taller now, compared to the great white ape, he almost forms the cutest height difference between couples. The great white ape nodded sensible and silently followed behind the guard wall with those little monkeys, escorting him to the entrance of the cave. There's no need to be sad, fate will meet you again. Wei Bi waved his hand and entered the cave. Fortunately, my body is not too big yet, and I can still pass through the entrance. Even if the body grows too fast, it is not afraid. The 9-yang manual contains the bone shrinking technique, which can help. The guard wall drilled out of the hole and stood on the platform, breathing fresh air. Heaven-reliant world, I'm here. Chapter 3. Return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wei Bi wrapped his clothes, then activated the 9-yang true qi, infused it onto his legs, and used the lightness skills taught by the martial arts martyr. There are two prerequisites for achieving the ultimate goal in lightness skills. One is the mastery of lightness skills, and the other is the possession of profound internal strength. Back then, Zhu Changling fell off a cliff. Although his lightness skills were superior to those of the current guard walls, his internal strength was far inferior. Even if there were visible stones, he couldn't jump over. Shua. The guard wall was pulled up in place, landing on the relatively gentle terrain where he had fallen back then. In this way, the guard wall jumped vertically and slowly climbed to the top of the cliff. Hu. On the top of the cliff, there was still white snow and a cold wind howling, but the walls filled with the true energy of the 9-yang in their bodies were no longer afraid of the cold. Following the path in my memory, Wei Bi walked towards the foot of the mountain and arrived near the red plum villa in my memory. The fragrance of red plums rushed towards me, and in the blink of an eye, I saw the competing red plums blooming on the branches. It wasn't until they saw Wei Bi standing vividly in front of them that everyone believed he was still alive. 2 years ago, my cousin Wei Bi took her and Wu Qingying up the mountain to play. When it came to martial arts, Wei Bi couldn't wait to show off his newly learned skills. However, there was a lot of snow on the mountaintop and the ground was slippery. Wei Bi accidentally rolled off the cliff, which frightened Zhu Jiuyang and Wu Qingying. The two of them returned to the red plum blossom villa in tears. Upon hearing what they had said, Zhu Changling quickly took people to search near the cliff. Some went down with ropes to explore, others searched everywhere, and some went back and forth to the bottom of the cliff to explore. The Zhu and Wu families have been tinkering for over a month, even if they haven't seen the corpses of the Wei wall. Zhu Changling and Wu Lai let out a sigh, thinking that the guard wall had been smashed to pieces or eaten up by jackals, wolves, and wild beasts, so they took people back to the mountain villa. Zhu Jiuyang and Wu Qingying were sad for more than half a year. After all, they really like Wei Bai. Cousin. Zhu Jiuyang looked at Wei Bai in front of him. Although he was a bit taller and dirty, he could still recognize him as her cousin. So Zhu Jiuyang threw himself into Wei Bai's arms and hugged him, crying. Cousin, be good. I'm back. Wei Bai smelled the fragrance emanating from Zhu Jiuyang's body and looked at the little girl in his arms, with a smile on his face. Zhu Changling was also very excited. His sister handed over the child to him for discipline, but as an uncle, he didn't take good care of the child. How can he explain to his sister? Alright now, everything is going well. Buyer, are you really back? Zhu Changling looked at Wei Bi with tears in his eyes and asked. Uncle, it's the child's unfilial behavior that worries you. Wei Bi let go of Zhu Jiuzhen and bowed to Zhu Changling. Ha, good. Although Zhu Changling was scheming with others, he really had nothing to say to his family. Zhu Changling held the guard wall and watched as he looked exhausted and heartbroken. He quickly arranged for someone to take him to wash up, then ordered his servants to prepare a banquet, and then sent someone to inform Wu Lai and Wu Qingying of the good news at Wu Lai's villa. Upon hearing Zhu Changling's arrangements, my heart warmed and I followed Zhu Changling's arrangements to wash up. After the bathroom is cleaned, the servants will take him to the hall. At this moment, Wu Lai and Wu Qingying have arrived and are chatting with Zhu Changling's family. Master, junior sister. Wei Bi quickly saluted Wu Lai and Wu Qingying when he saw them. Senior brother. Wu Qingying saw Wei Bi and felt like she had passed away. She could no longer bear the longing in her heart and threw herself into Wei Bai's arms, crying bitterly. Junior sister, it's all my senior brother's fault that worries you, Wei Bi patted Wu Qingying's back and said. Huh, buyer, you can come back safely. I and your uncle are very happy. Big brother, we should either get drunk or not come back. Wu Lai turned his head and said to Zhu Changling. Today, Zhu Changling felt happy in his heart and decided to drink with Wu Lai happily. Both of them were drunk, shouting and jumping, which provoked a wave of anger and scolding from Lady Zhu. Wei Bi knew it was normal and quickly helped Zhu Changling back to his room, then escorted Wu Lai to the guest room. He himself chatted with Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying, sharing the pain of missing each other in the past 2 years. Everything is on track. Wu Lai and Zhu Changling once again imparted the martial arts of Wei Bi, only to find that Wei Bi had completely changed from before. When learning martial arts, concentrate and no longer slack off. After learning, draw analogies and ponder the changes in moves. Who doesn't like such an apprentice? Wu Lai wished he could pass on all the martial arts he knew, and Zhu Changling also had the same idea. Unexpectedly, the ancestor of Wu Lai passed down a move called 18 Dragon Subduing Palms, which was unexpected by Wei Bi. It must be Wu Xiuan who knew his brain was not working well, so he secretly recorded what Guo Jing told him on paper and passed it down. This move is to walk on frost and ice, with the left palm horizontally launched and the right fist striking directly, one fast and one slow, one hard and one soft, both positive and negative, with infinite magical effects. Seeing Wei Bi practicing martial arts so seriously, Zhu Wu and his companions were very happy. Wu Lai and Zhu Changling were happy, while Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying were unhappy. Since Wei Bi returned, he seems to have changed a person, obsessed with martial arts, and no longer lingering on love for children. The two of them came to play with Wei Bi again, but were both rejected by Wei Bi. Wei Bi also advised them to practice martial arts well and explore the world together in the future. At first, Zhu Jiuzhen thought that Wei Bi was enchanted by Wu Qingying. Wu Qingying thought that Wei Bi was entangled by Zhu Jiuzhen. These words were just excuses, but later the two realized they were both wrong. Her cousin, senior brother, quit her. Until the end, Wei Bi called Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying together and the three had a conversation. Cousin, am I pretty or is Sakura pretty? Zhu Jiuzhen shook Wei Bai's left arm, flashing his big eyes as if waiting for Wei Bi to say, you are more beautiful than my junior sister. Senior brother, am I beautiful or is my real sister beautiful? Wu Qingying held on to Wei Bai's right arm and kept shaking, staring at Wei Bi with her eyes fixed on him, waiting for him to say, you are more beautiful than my cousin. Although the previous guard wall was small, it had a lot of heart and mind. When you are with Wu Qingying, she is more beautiful than Zhu Jiuzhen. When you are with Zhu Jiuzhen, you say Zhu Jiuzhen is more beautiful than Wu Qingying. When you are with two people, you say they each have their own unique characteristics. Saying this every day made Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying jealous, and the two of them fought openly and secretly until Zhu Changling fell off a cliff, and Wei Bi finally focused on Wu Qingying. Junior sister, cousin, you should know that our faces were given by our parents, so there's nothing worth showing off. We're still young now, and the most important thing is to practice martial arts well. In the future, it wouldn't be beautiful for the three of us to venture the world together. Wei Bi tried to persuade the two. Cousin, why are we going to wander the rivers and lakes? Isn't it good to be near Kunlun Mountain? It's great to have our father and Uncle Wu protecting us. Zhu Jiuzhen finished speaking, and Wu Qingying nodded in agreement. A stunning stroke of Zhu Changling has gained some fame near Kunlun Mountain. Even he Taichong from Kunlun sect would give him some face. Wu Lai called him the Diamond Leopard not only because he had a hot temper, but also because his palms were exceptionally skilled, having killed many bandits and bullies. How can we always rely on the wings of our master and uncle? Wei Bi said loudly, we learn martial arts well, rely on our own abilities, and strive for fame in the martial arts world. Only then can we be considered capable. But can we? Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying asked weakly. What's wrong with this? I'm only 9 years old this year, you two are only 8 years old, and we're still young. Wei Bi smiled and said, as long as our martial arts are deep, iron pestles are ground into needles, and we persist in practicing without slacking off, our martial arts will naturally improve day by day. Okay. Zhu Changling and Wu Lai turned out from behind the rockery and clapped their hands, saying, Bayer has ambition. Your master and I are very pleased. Thank you very much for your praise, uncle and master. Wei Bi quickly bowed and bowed. Good child, since you have this ambition, your uncle and I will naturally do our best to teach you, said Wu Lai. Thanks to uncle and master for taking the trouble, Wei Bi arched his hand and said. Hey, you silly child, I'm your master, big brother is your uncle. Who should we teach you if we don't teach you? Wu Laichong patted Wei Bai's shoulder and said. Wei Bai's heart warmed. Although Zhu Changling and Wu Lai had ulterior motives towards others, they were still very considerate towards their daughter and themselves. He always wanted to slowly change their thoughts and prevent them from going astray again. Both of them no longer hide their secrets. In the following year, Zhu Changling taught Wei Bai the technique of using the one-yang finger and the judge's pen to hit acupoints. Unexpectedly, when Wei Bai used it, his power was much stronger than his own. This made Zhu Changling both happy that his nephew had made great achievements and sad that his strength was average, which was not comparable to his nephew. Chapter 4. Jianghu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In addition to imparting martial arts skills, Zhu Changling and Wu Lai also introduced the current power of the martial arts world to the three members of Wei Bai. When a few people go out to wander the martial arts world, they know nothing and are laughed at by others. Nowadays, there are 6 major sects in the martial arts world, with the Shaolin and Wudang sects being the strongest, followed by the Amei and Kunlun sects, followed by the Huashan and Kongtong sections. Zhu Changling first introduced the 6 major sections. The sect is led by the Shaolin sect, the gang is led by the Beggars sect, and the sect is also respected by the Ming sect, Zhu Changling continued. Uncle, are we a gang, sect, or sect? What is our ranking in the martial arts world? Wei Bai asked with wide eyes. Zhu Changling looked a little embarrassed and exchanged a glance with Wu Lai, both blushing slightly. Stinky kid, there are so many questions. Just listen to what your uncle says. Wu Lai directly patted the guard wall, causing Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying to turn pale in the eyes. Wei Bai apologized in fear, but in his heart, he smiled and said that if you two had a broken Lianhuan villa, it would be useless. A sect with a little bit of strength could easily defeat you. Cough cough, just now Bayer asked us if we belong to a sect or a gang, and where we rank in the martial arts world. I can only say that we don't count at all, nor can we rank in the ranks. Zhu Changling changed his tone and said excitedly, when we get the dragon-slaying saber and become the supreme martial arts expert, who won't listen to us then?" Upon hearing these words, Wei Bi almost made his liver tremble with laughter. "With a broken knife, who would listen to you? If it were so magical, Xie Sun would need to flee overseas." "Uncle, are you talking about such a magical dragon-slaying knife?" Wei Bi pretended to be surprised and asked, while Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying also stared wide-eyed, waiting for Zhu Changling's explanation. At this moment, Zhu Changling played tricks and picked up the teacup in front of him. He drank it slowly and glanced at Wei Bi, Zhu Jiuzhen, and Wu Qingying, intending to take the opportunity to test their composure. Of course, Wei Bi wouldn't rush to ask, because he really knows more and sees through more than Zhu Changling. "Oh, Dad, hurry up and say it." Zhu Jiu was truly a curious age. Zhu Changling teased her and made her itch. How could she bear it? So he hurriedly urged her. Bayer and Qingying have good composure, but Zhener is a bit lacking. "You should learn more from your cousin Aning Mei," Zhu Changling said with a smile. Wu Qingying originally wanted to urge Zhu Changling, but was preempted by Zhu Jiuzhen. Before she could speak again, she heard Zhu Changling's praise. So she swallowed the words directly and pretended to be indifferent, smiling at Zhu Jiuzhen. Upon seeing Wu Qingying's expression, Zhu Jiuzhen was so angry that his teeth were itching. However, in public, he couldn't pounce on him and bit him, so he had to secretly sulk. And Wei Bi stretched out two small hands, one holding Zhu Jiuzhen and the other holding Wu Qingying, gently swaying. With such a grip from Wei Bi, Zhu Jiuzhen and Wu Qingying lost all their careful thoughts, and their faces wore smiles as if they had been drinking honey. "Zhu Changling and Wu Lai, take a look at me, take a look at you, come on, this daughter has been abducted by Wei Bi." However, Wei Bi was the nephew of Zhu Changling and the disciple of Wu Lai, so they were not outsiders to them, so they did not stop the three of them from making small moves. Seeing Zhu Changling and Wu Lai smiling at him, Wei Bi quickly withdrew his hands and sat upright, asking, "Uncle, is this dragon-slaying sword so magical? How could it make the whole Jianghu listen to us?" Bayer, there's a saying you don't know. Wu Lai boasted, "The supreme martial arts master, the sword slays dragons. He commands the world, and no one dares to disobey him. Who can compete with him if he relies on the heavens and doesn't emerge? So powerful. Who owns that dragon-slaying knife now?" Wei Bi asked with wide eyes. 8 years ago, the dragon-slaying saber was obtained by the Heavenly Eagle sect, and then held a sword-raising ceremony at Wangpan Mountain. However, it was disrupted by the Golden Lion King Xie Sun, who not only took the sword away, but also kidnapped Yin Susu, the daughter of Yin Tianzheng, the leader of the Heavenly Eagle sect, and Zhang Wuxia, one of the 7 heroes of Wudang. He then shook everyone present into dementia. "Uncle, this is not right," Wei Bi hurriedly said. "What's wrong?" Zhu Changling hesitated for a moment and asked. "Uncle, you said it yourself. Holding the dragon-slaying saber, people in the martial arts world have to obey you. Why don't those people listen to the instructions of the Heavenly Eagle sect? That Xie Sun is even more outrageous, he went to compete for the dragon-slaying saber. But in the end, the dragon-slaying saber is in his hands. Do people in the martial arts world also have to obey his orders?" Wei Bi directly questioned. "Well, how could we listen to his orders? You're just a child, you're just talking in your own words," Wu Lai scolded in a loud voice. "That's it, then." Wei Bi spread his hands and said, "Since they don't agree with us when they get the dragon-slaying saber, will everyone follow our orders? Isn't this just a fantasy? In my opinion, this knife will only bring trouble and cannot make you the supreme martial arts master. Unless you have unique martial arts skills and influence in the world." This. Zhu Changling was stunned on the spot when he heard Wei Bai's words. It seems that there is a truth that this dragon-slaying sword was first obtained by Yu Dai Yan, a member of the Wudang sect, and then his limbs were broken. The Heavenly Eagle sect obtained the dragon-slaying saber, the Hall leader was killed, and their daughter was abducted. If I were to get the dragon-slaying knife myself, would they be able to stop them from grabbing it? Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai looked at each other and were both shocked by Wei Bai's words. They had been tirelessly sending people to inquire about the news of the dragon-slaying saber in order to one day obtain him. According to Wei Bai, without the power and martial arts skills that stand alone in the world, even if one obtains them, they cannot be saved and may bring disaster to their family. Uncle, Master, although the dragon-slaying saber is known as the supreme martial arts sword, it is just a sharp sword. It is of no benefit to us to obtain it, so it is better to develop our strength steadily. Wei Bai took the opportunity to persuade. Let's consider it again, Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai replied. After all, the two of them have been planning for the dragon-slaying knife. In the original work, they burned down the Red Plum Blossom Villa, and the whole family fled, just to make Zhang Wuji trust him and take them to find Xie Sun to retrieve the precious sword. Let them suddenly give up chasing the dragon-slaying saber, this transformation is too fast, and Wei Bai also knows that some things cannot be achieved overnight. Seeing Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai feeling low and lacking in fighting spirit over the matter of the dragon saber, Wei Bai quickly changed the topic. Uncle, Master, what major and interesting events have happened in the martial arts world in recent years? Wei Bai pretended to be curious and asked. Speaking of which, there are really a few major events that have shaken the martial arts world. Zhu Chongling heard Wei Bai's words and thought for a moment. After organizing his thoughts, he said to the three of them. Chapter 5. Discussion on Potential. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I just told you that there are 6 major sects in the martial arts world, and now I will introduce their power to you. Zhu Chongling introduced, Shaolin Temple has a long history and strong strength, and has been the leader of the martial arts for many years. Shaolin Divine Monk, seeing and hearing is wise. However, Kongming Divine Monk has passed away, and currently the abbot of Shaolin is Kongming Master. Wei Bai nodded, and the head of the 4 great divine monks, Master Kong Jian, was killed by Xie Sun's 7-hurt fist. At Zhang Sanfeng's centenary banquet, Shaolin Temple claimed that Xie Sun had killed Kong Jianshan monk, so they sought revenge on Xie Sun. It seems that they have not yet declared that Kong Jian was killed by Xie Sun. The Wudang sect has only been established for a few decades and can stand side by side with the Shaolin sect. It is worth mentioning the founder of the Wudang sect, Zhang Sanfeng, said Zhu Chongling, with admiration and envy on his face. Zhang Sanfeng is truly a master of his generation. He not only delved into many unique skills, but also cultivated 7 extraordinary disciples, each of whom had skills comparable to those of the leaders of other sections. The 7 of them were known for their chivalry and righteousness in the martial arts world, and were praised as the 7 heroes of Wudang. Wu Lai took over the conversation and praised them. Unfortunately, 8 years ago, Yu Daiyan's limbs were broken by someone, Zhang Zuishan's whereabouts are unknown, and there are only 5 remaining Wudang's 7 heroes, sighed Zhu Chongling. We should take the opportunity to establish good relations with the Wudang sect, said Wei Bai in a voice. No way. Wu Lai spoke up and stopped. Before Zhang Zuishan went missing, he slaughtered more than 70 members of the Longmen Escort Agency. The chief escort of the Longmen Escort Agency, De Jin, was a disciple of the Shaolin secular family. This incident has spread in the martial arts world, and people in the martial arts world believe it was Zhang Zuishan's fault. In addition, it is said that Yu Daiyan was injured by the Great Diamond Finger. Although the Shaolin and Wudang sects did not fight each other, the people in the martial arts world know that the 2 sects cannot coexist peacefully. Have the Wudang sect and Zhang Zuishan confessed to the massacre of the Longmen Escort Agency? Wei Bai asked. Zhang Zuishan has been missing for 8 years, how can he plead guilty? The Wudang sect says there are many doubts about this matter, and only by finding Zhang Zuishan can we distinguish the truth from the falsehood. Zhu Chongling explained. Yeah, Since we're not sure if it's the Wudang sect and Zhang Zuishan who did it, these people in the martial arts world can't wrongly accuse the Wudang sect. This is exactly the opportunity for us to make friends with the Wudang sect. Wei Bi hurriedly said, intending to take this opportunity to befriend the Wudang sect, which is more cost-effective than offending the Wudang sect. Even if we stand in line, we should still stand behind the Shaolin sect, said Zhu Chongling. Uncle, that's not right. Wei Bi waved his hand and denied it directly. Where's the difference? Zhu Chongling was knocked unconscious by the small hand of Wei Bi. You little brat, you haven't grown all your hair yet. You dare to say I'm wrong. If you can't come up with a reason, I'll have to spank you. Uncle, master, as you have all said, Zhang Sanfeng is a great master of his generation. The disciples he teaches are chivalrous and righteous in the martial arts world. How could they be the villains who massacre the entire sect? Wei Bi continued, if Zhang Zuishan doesn't appear for a day, there won't be a conclusion about this matter. Wudang sect is not the culprit. Well, you keep talking, Zhu Chongling said calmly. If you only say these 2 words, you won't be able to convince us. Wu Lai also stared, waiting for Wei Bi to continue speaking. As the saying goes, it's easy to add icing on the cake, but difficult to give charcoal in the snow. When the whole martial arts world and Wudang sect are at odds, we support Wudang sect. How can we not let Wudang sect remember this kindness? If there are any troubles in the future, will Wudang sect not lend a helping hand? As Wei Bi said, it is reasonable that Jiang and Lakers like to do icing on the cake and dare not take any action to give charcoal in the snow. After all, the situation is unknown and it is easy to cause trouble. What about the Shaolin sect? Wu Lai pursued, his big eyes fixed on the guard wall. The Shaolin sect has regarded themselves as the leader of the martial arts world for many years. In their eyes, the entire Jianghu should support him, but he will not remember this kindness because in their eyes, it is a matter of course. Wei Bi explained. But in this way, we will become enemies with the Shaolin sect, Zhu Chongling said. Compared to the Wudang sect, the Shaolin sect is more powerful. If we support the Wudang sect, we may face more difficulties in our future actions. Uncle, what I said about support is only at the right time, not loudly supporting now, said Wei Bi. Okay, we'll discuss it later, Zhu Chongling said with a nod. Yes, uncle, Wei Bi arched his hand and replied. Except for the Shaolin and Wudang sects, they belong to the Amei and Kunlun sects, Zhu Chongling continued. The leader of the Amei sect is the Extinction Abbess, and a group of female disciples under her command are of great strength. The leader of the Kunlun sect is He Taichong, and together with his wife Ban Shuxian, they support the Kunlun sect. As for the Huashan sect, the leader is Xian Yutang, who is nicknamed Shenjizi and has outstanding martial arts and character. Zhu Chongling explained. What is it? Xian Yutang has outstanding character. Wei Bi immediately wanted to come forward with a theory, but realized that it was just empty talk and could not be convincing. He had to wait for the opportunity to expose Xian Yutang's identity as a jackal. The Kongtong sect ranks at the bottom of the 6 major sections. Although it may not be impressive compared to the other 5 sects, it is also a presence that cannot be provoked in the eyes of other sections. The Kongtong 5 elders have extraordinary martial arts skills and even have a unique skill in the 7-damage fist. Back then, the Kongtong sect's Mu Lingzi used the 7-damage fist to wander the world, said Zhu Chongling. Wei Bi smiled and didn't say anything. The 5 elders of Kongtong were indeed inferior to other sects, and their unique skills were even taken away by Xie Sun. They couldn't beat them, and there was no place to reason, almost suffocating them to death. The leader of the beggars sect is Shi Hulong, who has earned the title of Gold and Silver Palm in the martial arts world. His martial arts skills are extraordinary, but he has rarely walked in the martial arts world in recent years. Shi Hulong. Wei Bi remembered that Shi Huolong seemed to be unable to practice the 18 dragon subduing palms properly, causing him to be paralyzed halfway. In the end, he was beaten to death by Qin Kuan and Qin Yuliang, and then Qin Yuliang found someone to pretend to be him. I don't know if Shi Huolong has collapsed now, but Wei Bi smiled and didn't think about it anymore. How is the influence of the Ming sect? Wei Bi heard Zhu Chongling introduce the beggars sect and curiously asked about the Ming sect. Mingjiao, also known as the demon cult in the martial arts world. The great demon head, Yang Dingtian, is rampant in the martial arts world, making it difficult for righteous people to lift their heads. Fortunately, he hasn't been wandering in the martial arts world in recent years, Zhu Chongling said with lingering fear. Upon hearing Zhu Chongling's words, Wei Bi chuckled inwardly, wondering what he was afraid of. Yang Dingshan was already dead and the Mingjiao was almost falling apart. It was not until the 6 major factions besieged Guangming Peak that they once again worked together to protect the Ming sect, and then Zhang Wuji suddenly appeared, that the Ming sect once again became dominant in the martial arts world. The demon cult also has the 4 great protector Dharma kings, the 5 scattered people, and the 5 flag envoy, all of whom have impressive strength. The white eyebrow eagle king Yin Tianjing and the golden lion king Xie Sun mentioned earlier all belong to the 4 great protector Dharma kings. Wu Lai added. Although they acted strangely, after all, there were a few people who had been thinking of expelling the Tartars and should be able to save them. Wei Bi had an idea in his heart. Chapter 6. Descending the Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Time is like an arrow, time flies like a shuttle. Another year passed in the blink of an eye. Wei Bi is 10 years old. In just 1 year, Zhang Cuishan and others returned from overseas, and Wei Bi eagerly descended the mountain to explore and broaden their horizons. Uncle, Master, I have been studying for several years and plan to go home and visit. Then I will also venture into the martial arts world, Wei Bi said to Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai. What? Are you going down the mountain? No, you're only 10 years old, too young. Zhu Chongling refused directly. Yeah, buyer, you're still too young. With plenty of time, you can learn kung fu for a few more years before going down the mountain. We won't stop you when you go home, but it's too dangerous for you to wander in the martial arts world. Wu Lai advised on the side. Which one has more time? What's so much? The exciting scene is coming soon. If we don't participate in it anymore, will we wait for the 6 major factions to besiege Guangming Peak? Uncle, Master, listen to me. Wei Bi helped Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai sit on chairs, and then poured a cup of tea for each of them. If you have something to say, just say it. If you have farts, don't mess with these useless things, Zhu Chongling glared at Wei Bi and said. Exactly, what are you trying to say? Wu Lai looked at the guard wall and said. Uncle, Master, I have been away from home for several years and come back to visit my parents. This should be human nature, right? Wei Bi asked. After thinking about it, Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai couldn't stop the child from being filial. Wu Lai spoke up and said, I just said, you go home to visit your parents, I won't stop you. Master, I am already a 10-year-old boy, and I am handsome and tall. Those who don't know must think I am 16 or 17. Wei Bi turned around and said. Indeed, during the 2 years since Wei Bi went missing, he didn't know what he had eaten and his head was jumping very fast, already 1 head higher than his peers. And during this year, Wei Bi kept practicing martial arts, running and jumping, and surprisingly grew 1 foot taller. Now Wei Bi is over 5 feet tall, with a symmetrical figure and a handsome appearance. At first glance, he must think he is a handsome young man from someone's family. Who would know that he is only 10 years old? Even so, that's not an excuse for you to venture down the mountain, Zhu Chongling retorted, but his tone was no longer so resolute. After hearing this, Wei Bi felt a sense of joy and excitement in his heart, so he quickly put forward a big idea. There are two reasons why my child went down the mountain this time. First, working behind closed doors is not a long-term plan. He needs to go down the mountain and explore and compete with people in the martial arts world to know what his shortcomings are. Second, not returning to his hometown is like a night trip in a brocade. If a child has achieved some martial arts skills, who would know the name of my Zhu Wu Lianhuan villa? Who would know the reputation of a shocking stroke and the diamond leopard from the Central Plains? As Wei Bi spoke, he glanced at Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai with his spare light. Smiles appeared on their faces, and Wei Bai's heart was filled with joy. There was a door. The ancestors of my uncle and master's two families followed Guojing and Guodaxia to guard Xiangyang in the past. Everyone in the world knows who doesn't know. The martial arts of the two families that I learned as a child naturally need to wander the rivers and lakes, eliminate a few scumbags, and kill a few Tartars. This is what the Zhu Wu family's unique skills are worth. Wei Bai said, shaking his hands as if he had already used the martial arts taught by Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai to eliminate violence and ensure peace. Bai has great ambition. I didn't accept you as a disciple for nothing. Wu Lai laughed heartily at Wei Bai's words, constantly praising him. Okay, Bai, you are indeed my good nephew. I allow you to venture into the martial arts world, but be careful. Zhu Chongling whispered. Yes, Bai, if you encounter a strong opponent, you should find an opportunity to run, don't try your best. If you lose your life, you will lose everything, you know. Wu Lai also instructed. Thank you very much for the guidance from my uncle and master over the years. Thank you, disciple. Wei Bai felt that the two of them truly cared for him, and before leaving, he kowtowed to Xiao Wei Bai and bowed to them. Silly child, what's this doing? Get up quickly. Zhu Chongling's eyes moistened. This nephew is not in vain, has achievements, knows gratitude, and has a bright future. That's right, you child. How could you give me such a set? Wu Lai reached out and grabbed Wei Bai, tidying up his clothes. Bai, are you going with Jiuyang and Qingying? Zhu Chongling asked. Uncle, I have more than enough self-protection now, but it's still a bit difficult for me to protect my cousin and junior sister. They will be in danger with me. So I want to leave secretly and leave my cousin and junior sister at home. When I have achieved some martial arts skills, I will take her and her to wander the world together. Wei Bai said. Well, their martial arts skills are still a bit lacking, so I took this opportunity to let them catch up, said Zhu Chongling. Thank you very much for your tolerance, uncle and master, Wei Bai arched his hand and said. When do you plan to leave? Wu Lai asked. The child plans to set off now. Wei Bai is worried about long dreams at night and is ready to immediately go back to the house to pack up his things. Well, a man should act cleanly and neatly. You go ahead and don't have to say goodbye again, Zhu Chongling waved his hand and said. Go ahead, Bai. Be careful with everything, Wu Lai said with wet eyes. Wei Bai bowed, then exited the hall and walked towards his room, but tears streamed down his eyes uncontrollably. People are not plants and trees, who can be ruthless. Over the past year, Zhu Chongling and his wife have taken care of themselves as if they were their own sons, and their martial arts skills have not been concealed. They have all passed them on to themselves, which has moved Wei Bai. Without any delay for a moment, Wei Bai picked up his pre-packed luggage and strode out of the Red Plum Blossom Villa before heading towards the Central Plains. Big brother, shouldn't we leave the wall and venture down the mountain? Wu Lai whispered. Do you also have this idea? Zhu Chongling asked in surprise. Originally, the two of them were praised and boasted about by Wei Bai just now, as if they had gone to heaven. They vaguely agreed to go down the mountain and wander around by Wei Bai. Now that they have calmed down, they both feel a bit impulsive. Just as I was about to call back Wei Bai, the butler came to report that young Master Biao had left the villa, and it was agreed upon by the two villa masters. Zhu Changling and the other two were also unable to say anything, so they had to wave their hands and let the butler busy. "Dad, where's my cousin?" Zhu Jiuzhen bounced up to Zhu Changling and asked. "Yeah, Dad, where's senior brother? Did you hide him for practicing martial arts?" Wu Qingying pouted. "Well, Dad still has something to do, you ask Uncle Zhu." Wu Lai had to throw Wu Qingying to Zhu Changling and then run away on his own. "Second brother, you're not kind." Zhu Changling shouted at Wu Lai's back, only to see him wave his hand and run out of the yard. Chi-filled Zhu Changling wanted to use his young finger to thrust Wu Lai to the ground. "Dad, where is my cousin exactly?" Zhu Jiuzhen held Zhu Changling's arm and shook it as he asked. "He went down the mountain and wandered around." Zhu Changling knew he couldn't keep it from him, so he spoke frankly. "Ah. Why didn't my cousin come down the mountain with me?" Zhu Jiuzhen's eyes were filled with tears in an instant, feeling very sad. "Yeah, why didn't senior brother bring me down the mountain?" Wu Qingying's eyes also turned red. "Do you want to know why Bai didn't take you with him?" Zhu Changling looked at the two of them and asked. "I don't know, you speak quickly, Dad." Zhu Jiuzhen asked eagerly, and Wu Qingying also stared at Zhu Changling, waiting for him to explain. "Because you two have poor martial arts skills, Bai is still unable to protect you and retreat in case of danger, which is why he went out alone to explore," said Zhu Changling. "Wu, no, my cousin often praises me for making rapid progress in martial arts." Zhu Jiuzhen burst into tears and tearfully retorted to Zhu Changling. "It's true. Bai's adventure in the martial arts world can last for at least a year and a half, or at most 3 or 2 years. You should take this opportunity to catch up and come down the mountain after arriving at Bai. He has no excuse not to take the two of you." Zhu Changling took the opportunity to deceive. "Really? Uncle Zhu?" Wu Qingying asked. "That's natural. As long as your martial arts meet the standards, even if he doesn't want to take you, I will force him to do it," Zhu Changling assured, patting his chest. "Okay, stinky cousin, I will definitely practice martial arts well and beat you up when you come back." Zhu Jiuzhen shook his small fist, his tearful face full of determination. "That's right, senior brother Stinky, let me beat you up with Sister Zhen." Wu Qingying gestured. "At this moment, the guard wall on the road feels a bit cold behind me, like a gust of Yin wind blowing by. Who is speaking ill of me?" At this moment, Wei Bi is heading towards Xia County in Jiezhou. Zhu Changling has told him that his family is a wealthy family in Xia County, and he knows it when he asks about it in the city. Looking at the city in front of me, there is no memory of the walls. Entering the city of Xia County, the guard wall asked passers-by about the location of the Wei family. Under the guidance of passers-by, Wei Bai arrived at the entrance of the Wei family. After the servants reported, Wei Cheng and Lady Wei hurriedly ran to the front yard. "Bai." Mrs. Wei saw Wei Bai without hesitation and directly hugged him, shedding tears. "Bai, you're back." Although Wei Cheng misses Wei Bai very much, as a man, he hasn't been too impolite like his wife. "Father, mother, the child is unfilial and has not shown filial piety by the side of the two elders." Wei Bai quickly knelt down and kowtowed to the two of Wei Cheng. "Silly child, get up quickly." The Acropolis quickly reached out and helped the wall up, then patted the wall's shoulder and said, "They're almost taller than me, and their bodies are also strong. All right." The eyes of the Acropolis were moist. At that time, in order to save their son's future, they reluctantly sent him away. How could they not miss him during these 5 years? They were just guarding their wife and refusing to lose face. Mrs. Wei held Wei Bai's hand and didn't want to let go at all, fearing that Wei Bai would turn around and leave again. Wei Cheng and his wife kept pulling at Wei Bai, asking him if he had eaten well, dressed well, suffered, or been injured in recent years. The child traveled thousands of miles and the mother was worried. Wei Bi felt the care from his parents and was very moved, without feeling impatient. He answered each question one by one. The Acropolis felt that its son had changed. Previously, this little brat had been reading books about sages for a few days and looked down upon himself as a businessman. He said that his master said he was a scholar, farmer, and merchant, and that merchants were lowly. Later, he even went to practice martial arts with his uncle. If Wei Bi remembers the past, he may have to laugh at that little Wei Bi. In his eyes, merchants are very popular, they know how to manage, exchange information, and their role is not important compared to others. Wei Bi learned from the entrance of the Acropolis that they were actually descendants of Wei Qin back then. Their ancestors were Wei Yi, who supported Chao Wei in the late Han dynasty, and they lived here for generations. However, during the chaos of the 5 barbarians in the late Jin dynasty, they went to seek refuge in Jiangnan and later moved back to their ancestral home. Feeling the love of the two of them in the Acropolis, Wei Bi also opened his heart and enjoyed the warmth of this moment. The Acropolis became increasingly satisfied with the Wei Bi. Upon hearing that the Wei Bi cared about the people of the world, they even passed down the military tactics of the Wei and Hua families from their ancestors to the Wei Bi. And the Acropolis, following the instructions of the walls, began secretly preparing provisions and equipment. Chapter 7. Meeting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After resting at home for a month, with only 3 months left until the 9th day of September, Wei Bi quickly found an excuse to venture out. On the 9th day of September this year, it is the 100th birthday of the founder of Wudang sect, Zhang Sanfeng. However, the events that happened on that day have left Zhang Sanfeng heartbroken. Wei Bi intends to befriend the Wudang sect and naturally wants to prevent these things from happening, but he doesn't know if he can make it in time. People may not rest, but horses cannot. It was not until early August that Wei Bi finally entered the territory of northern Hubei. Seeing the gathering of martial arts figures in the Hubei region, Wei Bi knew that it was probably the whereabouts of Zhang Zuishan and others who had leaked, which led to the gathering of many people in the Hubei region. Wei Bi found an inn to rest and let the horses rest. He also replenished his energy and inquired about the news. I heard that Zhang Zuishan returned from overseas and even married Yin Susu from the Tianying sect. How could it be? You're just talking nonsense. Wudang sect belongs to the 6 major sects, while Tianying sect is a cult. How could they possibly combine? How impossible. A lonely man and a widow have been on a deserted island for 10 years and already have a child. It's common for handsome men and beautiful women. If it were me, I would have at least 5 or 6 children. Don't you have any other hobbies? Ha ha ha. I heard that the Golden Lion King who disappeared with them also had news. What? It's the golden-haired Lion King Xie Sun who does all sorts of evil and shakes everyone in Wangpan Mountain into dementia. That's fake. They disappeared together, maybe they'll stay together for the next 10 years. Where is Xie Sun staying? Did Zhang Zuishan and the others mention it? It is precisely because they did not speak up that we have to go up the mountain to force them. Up Wudang Mountain. Are you crazy? Where is Zhang Laodao? Do you still have life to go down the mountain alive? The law does not blame others, it has been like this since ancient times. Can Zhang Laodao still kill us all? You cow. Has Zhang Zuishan returned to Wudang Mountain? No. The Kunlun sect did not inquire about Xie Sun's whereabouts, so they spread the news widely in the martial arts world and wanted to unite with everyone to force Zhang Zuishan. What are we doing now? Wait. What are you waiting for? The 9th day of September is Zhang Laodao's centenary birthday, and Zhang Zuishan will definitely come back before that. How do you know? Nonsense, people's lives have been rare since ancient times, let alone Zhang Laodao's 100th birthday. Since Zhang Zuishan has returned to Middle-earth, regardless of the difficulties and dangers, he will definitely come back to congratulate Zhang Laodao. How will he be after he comes back? It's best if we can stop him. If we can't stop him, we'll go up the mountain on the 9th day of the 9th lunar month. The whole martial arts world will force Zhang Zuishan together, and see if he's still hiding Xie Sun's whereabouts. Brother, do you have a grudge against Xie Sun? That's for sure. Didn't you? I have, my older brother was killed by him. And you, brother? He snatched my knife. Knife? What kind of knife is it? Dragon-slaying sword. Puff. The onlookers couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of water and wine. Nima, is the dragon-slaying sword yours? That's mine, okay. Listening to the discussions of these people, Wei Bi roughly understood the current situation. Zhang Zuishan and others had not yet returned to Wudang Mountain, and these people had come to ambush in advance. It is estimated that some of them went to the foot of Wudang Mountain to inquire about the news later, which was discovered by Zhang Songshi and Yin Lighting, and then they found out that Zhang Zuishan had returned to Middle-earth. Wei Bi felt that staying here was meaningless. It would be better to go and greet Zhang Zuishan and others, so that they could contact each other in advance and have a better relationship. Without delay, after having lunch, Wei Bi quickly rode a tall horse and headed east. I remember several locations on the Wei Wall, including Fukiku, the foot of Tongling Mountain, Hangkou, and Anlu. Then follow this road and take a look. If you haven't encountered them in half a month, then return and head straight to Wudang Mountain. On this day, Wei Bi arrived in Anlu. Feeling tired and exhausted, Wei Bi directly found a small shop in the town to rest. If you don't encounter them the next day, Wei Bi will turn around and head straight for Wudang Mountain, waiting for a rabbit. Wei Bi rushed on one after another, feeling so tired that he slept until noon. Oh, did they pass by while they were asleep? Wei Bi was very frustrated and quickly asked the waiter to feed the horses and bring the food. After finishing eating and drinking, Wei Bi checked out and got on a white horse, heading towards Hangkou. Unexpectedly, shortly after leaving Anlu, I heard cries and slashes coming from ahead. The wall guard dared not delay and hurriedly rode forward on horseback. Turning around the small hill in front, Wei Bi saw a shocking scene. I saw more than a dozen Tartar soldiers slaughtering Han people. Not bad, it was a massacre. A Tatar soldier kicked a 3 or 4-year-old child into mid-air and saw the child fall. Then another Tatar soldier extended his foot and kicked him into mid-air again. After going back and forth for so many times, the child's 7 orifices were bleeding, his face turned pale, and he couldn't live anymore. A few people pulled over the Han women they had caught and started moving around in broad daylight. Just before Wei Bi could take action, the Tartars came from another direction with 4 people and 3 horses, 2 men, 1 woman, and 1 child. At present, a person in their 30s, upon seeing the evil deeds of the Tartars, immediately dismounted and slapped the Tartar soldier who was kicking the child in the chest. The Tartar soldier couldn't survive, and then another Tartars attacked from behind. "Dad, be careful," the child shouted anxiously. "Good child, let's see Daddy kill the Tartars for you." The man didn't turn his head back, and with an empty hand, he took the spear from the Tartar soldiers and directly poked back. The Tartars were stabbed in the chest, and with a loud bang, they fainted to the ground. The woman was also unwilling to fall behind and flew into the group of Tartars, then grabbed 2 long swords and kept chopping. The middle-aged man in his 40s had a cold and stern expression, shouting and clapping, and 2 Tartars beside him died instantly. Watching these 4 people, Wei Bi suddenly remembered that they were Yu Lianzhou, Zhang Zuishan, Yin Susu, and Zhang Wuji. Is this the safe place for them to encounter the Tartars? Thinking of this, Wei Bi quickly mobilized his internal strength and shouted, "Protect the child." Zhang Zuishan and others heard the shouting of Wei Bi and looked up, thinking that Wei Bi was saying to save the children in the crowd first. Therefore, the few people hurriedly killed the Tartars while paying attention to whether there were any children. In their eyes, Zhang Wuji had studied martial arts for a few years and had no problem dealing with the Tartar soldiers, so they were not worried. Those Tartars were sandwiched before and after, and they panicked and fled in all directions. However, they did not expect that they were extremely cruel. Even when they ran away, the butcher's knife still swung towards the Han people around them. Yu Lianzhou was extremely angry, and all these animals should be beaten to death. Seeing the Tartars scattered and fleeing, Yu Lianzhou still remembered to chop down the Han people around him. He was furious and ordered Zhang Cuishan and Yin Susu to separate and surround him. Protect the child. Wei Bi dismounted and ran towards Zhang Wuji's position, while summoning his internal strength again and shouting loudly. Yu Lianzhou and the three of them did not expect that this young child's skills would be so profound at such a young age. Before he could react, he saw the Yuan soldier who had been stunned by Zhang Cuishan jump up, embrace Zhang Wuji who was clapping his hands, and then leap towards the distance. Stop the dog thief. Yu Lianzhou leaped 2 times and came behind the Yuan soldier, then slapped his right palm with anger. Chapter 8. Assistance. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The Yuan soldier just casually patted, and Yu Lianzhou instantly felt extremely cold all over, as if falling into an ice cave, while the Yuan soldier used this force to fly towards the distance. Wuji. Yin Susu chased after the Yuan soldier like a madman. Seeing that the Yuan soldier was about to escape, the guard wall dared not delay and quickly used its internal strength to release a yang finger, shooting towards the acupoint on the back of the person. Just the horse's back was bumpy, and Wei Bai's fingers swayed, touching his back instead of the acupoints. However, the power of the one yang finger should not be underestimated. The Yuan soldier heard a rapid sound of breaking through the air and had not yet had time to dodge. Suddenly, his back warmed up, and his whole body's strength seemed to be melted. His hands and feet fell to the ground with soreness. The Yuan soldier was knocked down by the guard wall, and with such a delay, Zhang Cuishan chased him close. Zhang Cuishan pointed the judge's pen at the Yuan soldier, who used his lazial dagger, glutinous rice rolls with sweet bean flour, to avoid Zhang Cuishan's attack. Yin Susu had already caught up and took the opportunity to snatch Zhang Wuji. Then, she handed out her long sword and wanted to end the Yuan soldier with Zhang Cuishan. Pa! Although the Yuan soldier fell to the ground, he still had the strength to fight back. He slapped off Yin Susu's long sword and Zhang Cuishan's judge's pen with both hands, knowing that the surprise attack had not taken effect. He had to withdraw and think of another way. Second brother, how do you feel? Zhang Cuishan saw that the Yuan soldiers had fled, but he didn't dare to pursue them. He quickly ran to Yu Lianzhou's side, trembling all over and his face turning pale. He asked with concern. It's okay. Yu Lianzhou saw that Zhang Cuishan and Yin Susu had already recaptured Zhang Wuji, while the Yuan soldier had already fled, so he began to use his internal power to heal his injuries with peace of mind. Thank you for saving me, young hero. Zhang Cuishan saw that the young man in white had knocked down the Yuan soldier from afar, so he quickly came to his side to express his gratitude. You don't need to be polite. The Yuan soldiers are so despicable that they killed me Han people and wanted to take away this brother. It's really worth killing. Wei Bi quickly jumped off his horse and smiled at Zhang Cuishan's arched hand. I am Zhang Cuishan from Wudong. May I know your name, young hero? Zhang Cuishan arched his hand at the guard wall. Originally, it was Zhang Wuxia from Wudong in front of him. It's a pleasure to meet you. At the lower guard wall, it's from Zhu Wu Lianhuan Zhuang. The guard wall quickly arched his small hand. It turns out to be young Xia Wei. I don't know what you call Zhu Changling and the Vajra Leopard martial martyrs, young Xia. Zhang Cuishan has been wandering the martial arts world for many years, so he naturally heard of the names of Zhu Changling and the martial martyrs. However, their strength is far from that of Wudong's sect, so they haven't had much interaction. Zhu Gong is my uncle, and Wu Gong is my mentor, Wei Bai replied. I see, thank you very much, young Xia Wei, for your help. Zhang Zuishan, as one of the 7 swordsmen of Wudong, was well versed and knowledgeable. He recognized that the martial arts that emitted sword energy from his fingertips were the Wunyang finger, so he looked at the Wei wall and praised, "I didn't expect young Xia Wei to be so young, and the Wunyang finger martial arts were so outstanding. Thank you very much for Zhang Wuxia's praise." Wei Bai smiled and then looked at Yu Lianzhou, who was sitting on the ground healing, asking, "This great hero has a pale face and is trembling all over. Has he been hit by some kind of cold palm? My internal skill is young and hard. Do you need my help? What is your purpose in helping us?" In Susu suddenly spoke out and asked. "Along the way, everyone I met was coveting Xie Sun's whereabouts in the dragon-slaying saber, but this young man didn't mention anything, which made In Susu uneasy. So she hugged Zhang Wuji tightly and asked aloud. Su must not be impolite." Zhang Zuishan quickly stopped In Su and then introduced to the guard wall, "Young Xia Wei, don't take it amiss. Zhuijing was almost taken away by thieves because his dog was close to being taken away. That's why everyone is at war. Zhang Wuxia doesn't need to be like this, you can understand." Wei Bai waved his hand and said, "Everyone can rest assured. I just want to kill the Yuan soldiers, and I don't intend to ambush anyone here, nor do I intend to blackmail you to reveal the whereabouts of Xie Sun and the dragon-slaying saber. Do you not want a dragon-slaying knife?" In Susu asked incredulously. "Just a sharper knife, what's good about it?" Wei Bai waved his hand and said. "Can you resist the temptation of the supreme martial arts?" In Susu relentlessly asked. The supreme martial arts master, the sword slays the dragon. The shout is quite loud, but who would listen to your command if you have a dragon-slaying sword? You have a cute mind, right?" Wei Bai sneered. Zhang Zuishan and In Susu exchanged a glance. Although they didn't know the meaning of the word xiu dou, the disdain in the young man's mouth was already evident, which surprised them a bit. Zhang Zuishan greatly admired Wei Bai's view, but In Susu was even more suspicious and did not continue to inquire. Yuer admires it. Yu Lianzhou, who was sitting on the ground healing his injuries, breathed a sigh of relief and arched his hand at the guard wall. It turned out that it was Wuxia who was wandering the martial arts world in front of me. The names of the 7 heroes of Wudong were so well known that I was able to see them all at once today, which is quite a worthwhile trip. Wei Bai quickly approached Yu Lianzhou and arched his hand, saying, "I dare not, thank you very much for the help of young Xia Wei's young finger. This is how I can retrieve Wuji's nephew." Yu Lianzhou slowly stood up and said. "You don't need to be polite, Wuxia." Wei Bai saw that Yu Lianzhou's face was still turning blue, so he asked with concern, "Are these cold palms so sinister?" Wuxia has not fully recovered yet. Zhang Zuishan and In Susu saw Yu Lianzhou stand up, thinking that he had already expelled the cold poison from his body. Only when they heard Wei Bai's words did they know that Yu Lianzhou was only temporarily suppressing the cold poison. "Second brother, how terrifying is this thief's cold palm?" Zhang Zuishan said in surprise. "Not bad, except for my mentor, I have never encountered someone with such terrifying skills," Yu Lianzhou sighed. "The 7 heroes of Wudong dominate the martial arts world, and there are only a few people who can confront them. Yu Lianzhou, as the most profound martial artist among the 7 warriors of Wudong, had even fewer opponents." Upon hearing his words, Zhang Zuishan and In Susu realized that the skill of pretending to be a Yuan soldier was so terrifying, and couldn't help but turn their gaze to the guard wall. Unexpectedly, Wei Bai pointed and knocked down the Yuan soldier. "You don't have to be so surprised, I was able to knock that person down just because the Wunyang finger belongs to the Yanggang finger power, and my true qi also belongs to the Yanggang path. And his true qi belongs to the Yin cold path, which happened to be restrained by my Wunyang finger and internal power," explained Wei Bai. At this moment, the development of things was too sudden. Yu Lianzhou either faced the enemy or healed his injuries, forgetting that his own internal strength was also masculine all the way. It was only because the opponent's skill was too terrifying that he was repelled. I see. Zhang Zuishan nodded. Can you heal my second uncle's injury? In Susu suddenly mentioned. In Susu's idea is very simple. Yu Lianzhou has profound skills. If his skills are restored, the next journey will not be so scary, and there is no need to worry about his own son's safety. Su Su is silent. Zhang Zuishan quickly spoke out to stop. No way. Yu Lianzhou, as the proud 7 heroes of Wudang, did not allow him to do so. Wuxia, Mrs. Zhang's words are not unreasonable. Your martial arts have recovered, and you can better exchange gifts with Zhang Wuxia and his family to ensure that they will not be harmed along the way. Wuxia, are you worried about rumors in the martial arts world that may harm the Wudang sect? I will definitely keep my mouth shut. Wei Bi was worried that Yu Lianzhou would not accept his help because of the face of the Wudang 7 heroes, so he quickly ensured that today's matter would not be talked about recklessly. Young Xia Wei misunderstood. Yu Lianzhou arched his hand and said, "What is the value of the words Wudang 7 heroes? I once heard my master say that although the one yang finger can heal internal injuries, those who use it will lose half a year of their martial arts skills. How does this make? So it's like this. Wuxia, don't worry. I didn't plan on using the one yang finger. My internal skill is the path of Yang Gang, and I believe it can cure Wuxia's cold poison." Wei Bai confidently said. Young Xia Wei, this cold poison should not be underestimated. If there is any carelessness, the cold poison will enter your body through your internal power, and the consequences will be unimaginable. Yu Lianzhou looked at the young man in front of him, looking in his teens. How profound is his internal function? Wuxia, don't worry. Let's quickly find a secluded place. This is a main road, and there are people coming and going at any time, which can easily miss out on important things, said Wei Bai. Thank you, young Xia Wei. Zhang Zuishan quickly thanked Wei Bai for his confidence in driving away Yu Lianzhou's cold poison. Zhang Wuxia, don't be polite, Wei Bai said and led them towards Anlu town. After a moment of turmoil just now, Zhang Wuji's face turned a bit pale, but he didn't shout, his composure was evident. Madam Zhang, I heard that you are the daughter of Yin, the leader of the Tianying sect. Wei Bai suddenly asked In Susu. That's right. In Susu didn't know what Wei Bai was thinking, so she looked at him with both eyes, waiting for his answer. Zhang Wuxia, Mrs. Zhang, you have connections with the Golden Lion King Xie Sun and the Dragon-Slaying Saber. This time, your family of 3 has returned to Middle-earth. Guess, when you return to Wudang Mountain, will the world's heroes go to make things difficult for you? Wei Bai asked. This. Zhang Zuishan stood still, carefully pondering whether it was not appropriate for him to come back and whether it would disturb his master's 100th birthday. Aren't they dying anymore? In Susu exclaimed in surprise, with Zhang Zhenren, the martial arts tycoon, here, how dare they go up Wudang Mountain to stroke the tiger's beard? As long as the benefits are big enough, no matter how big the risks are, there are people willing to take them. Wei Bai finished speaking and looked at In Susu, saying, actually, what I want to say is, since so many of them will go up the mountain to trouble you, why don't you make an appointment with someone in advance? For example, Yin, the leader of the Eagle sect, and the friends that the 7 heroes of Wudang each make. Upon hearing Wei Bai's words, Yu Lianzhou and others carefully pondered how to arrange it. Chapter 9. Seeking Help. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A few people arrived at Anlu town, and Wei Bai led Yu Lianzhou and others into an inn, opening 2 rooms. I will first help Wuxia dissolve the cold poison in his body. Could you please ask Zhang Wuxia and Miss Yin to protect me both? Wei Bai asked In Susu to calm Zhang Wuji down and sleep, then asked Zhang Zuishan and Miss Yin to protect them. You should be like this. Zhang Zuishan said without hesitation. After all, he was treating his second senior brother's injuries, how could he refuse? Everything was ready, and Yu Lianzhou sat on the bed with his face facing towards the edge. Wei Bai sat behind Yu Lianzhou, mobilizing the 9 yang true qi in his body, and his palms slowly pressed against Yu Lianzhou's Lingtai acupoint. Yu Lianzhou suddenly felt a stream of heat entering her body. The previously laborious cold toxin, which had been expelled, was stripped off her meridians under the action of this heat flow and moved with this internal force. The cold poison accumulated more and more, and was eventually surrounded by the internal force of the guard wall. It sprayed out from the mouth of Yu Lianzhou, and this blood stasis wrapped in cold poison fell to the ground, instantly freezing into a strand of ice. In Susu finally understood why Wei Bai asked Yu Lianzhou to sit by the bed and not allow them to be in front of Yu Lianzhou now. Half an hour later, there was no trace of coldness in Yu Lianzhou's body, and his true qi seemed to have become much more pure. Wei Bai felt that there was no more cold poison in Yu Lianzhou's body, and then withdrew his internal strength and sent him back to the elixir field to collect his energy. At this moment, Wei Bai's face had already shed a lot of sweat. Yu Erdwa thanks the young hero Wei for his help. Yu Lianzhou regained his composure and arched his hand towards the guard wall. Zhang Wudwa thanks the young hero Wei for his help. Zhang Cuishan also arched his hand towards the guard wall. You don't need to be polite, Yu Wuxia and Zhang Wuxia. We met by chance, and they are martial arts heroes in the martial arts world. It's an honor for me to contribute to them, Wei Bai replied with a smile. The kindness of young Xia Wei is deeply ingrained in the hearts of Wudang sect. Yu Lianzhou values the kindness of Wei Bai in rescuing him. Wei Bai waved his hand and no longer declined, suggesting that a few people write letters seeking help. In my opinion, when you return to Wudang Mountain, you will face many difficulties. It's better to plan ahead, Wei Bai suggested. Well, I just discussed with Zhu Jing to ask him to write a letter to Old Mount Taishan. This time, I will use Old Mount Taishan's strength to overcome the difficulties. Zhang Cuishan's face was a bit lonely. After all, the 7 swordsmen of Wudang took the initiative to seek help, which has not happened in the Jianghu for decades. Zhang Wuxia's words are not accurate. Wei Bai quickly explained, you and Miss Yin have long been married. You should know that husband and wife are originally one, and you and the Yin sect leader are originally one family. How can we talk about who helps who? Isn't that too far-fetched? What young Xia Wei said is, Brother Wu, don't think so much. Wei Bai's words touched Yin Susu's heart, making her perception of Wei Bai much better. What young Xia Wei said is absolutely right, Zhang Cuishan replied with a smile, but there was a hint of unnatural expression in his eyes, which was caught by Wei Bai. Wei Bai smiled but did not reveal the definition of good, and evil in his heart. It was better for his master to reveal it to him, so he didn't pretend to be forced here. Yin Susu went down to arrange for a letter to be delivered to the Tianying sect, while Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan were also discussing who to write to for help. The next day, Yu Lianzhou was in high spirits, protecting Zhang Cuishan and his family as they continued forward. They had an extra white horse by their side, and the handsome young master on horseback was Wei Bai. Yin Susu is the most active in her mind. With such a powerful expert around her, why not invite him up the mountain? By the way, thank you for his help on the way to a few people. Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan strongly agreed with Yin Susu's ideas, so they began to persuade Wei Bai. Young Xia Wei, my master has celebrated his 100th birthday. Now that Yu Er and Zhang Wu invite you to the mountain as guests, you cannot refuse. Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan arched their hands at the guard wall. Wei Bai looked at the 2 people in front of him and froze in place. Isn't this called inviting the emperor into a jar? I advised them to invite a few experts to help, but the 2 of them came to invite me. 2 of you, here you are. Wei Bai smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although he wanted to go to Wudang Mountain to meet Zhang Sanfeng and several other Wudang 5 heroes, he felt awkward being invited by his own method. "Huh, young Xia Wei, but you persuaded us to invite experts. You are the first person we solemnly invited, you cannot refuse." Yuan Zhang smiled and said. "I just don't have anything on me, how could I pay such respects?" Wei Bai spread his hands and said. "Oh, that's not right, young Xia Wei. Even if young Xia Wei only gave us a glass of clean water, we would still enjoy it." Yu Lianzhou said with a smile. Wei Bai originally wanted to establish a good relationship with the Wudang sect, so he took this opportunity to step down and accompany Yu Lianzhou and others. As for the gift to Zhang Sanfeng, he had already arranged for Fang Qing to find Zhu Chongling and Wu Lai in advance. After spending a huge amount of money to buy it, he sent a fast horse to Wudang Mountain. He had planned to feel embarrassed to go up the mountain after the gift arrived, but now he has to go by himself. It's best for the gift to arrive on the same day. Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan were delighted to invite Wei Bai to Wudang Mountain. Along the way, they chatted and talked with Wei Bai. Fortunately, Wei Bai knew a lot of stories, and Yu and Zhang continued to marvel. Although Wei Xiaoxia was young, he knew many stories about the martial arts world. "My master mentioned the 5 wonders of the Huashan swordsmanship in the past, and coincidentally, my master and my ancestor pursued Xiaoxiangzi and Yin Keshi to Huashan. It was truly an honor to meet the top martial arts experts in the martial arts world of that year." Yu Lianzhou longed for it. As a martial arts practitioner, who wouldn't want to see the top martial arts experts in the martial arts world? I don't know which one was stronger or weaker compared to his mentor back then. Indeed, in the past, the mischievous children of the East Evil, West Crazy, South Monk, and North Hero were all top-notch experts in the martial arts world, each with their own unique skills. Unfortunately, most of them have been lost in the martial arts world now. Wei Bai sighed, saying that Guadaxia's famous 18 dragon subduing palms from the past have not been fully passed down to this day. The old mischievous children's Kongming fist and left-right fighting technique have also been lost, and Yang Guo's desperate soul palm and heavy sword technique have also been lost. Yeah, Yu Lianzhou sighed in agreement. Subsequently, several people began to talk and guide the world. Yin Susu was also very happy, after all, with such skilled protection, Zhang Wuji's safety was an extra guarantee. A group of 5 people, there were still people visiting on the road, but they didn't pay any attention. Just as a few people passed by Xiangyang and arrived near Taipingdian, they finally couldn't bear it and surrounded them with people. Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan looked at each other with a smile, as if they had returned to the days of wandering the world side by side. A few people have discussed that these people should be taking action nearby. If they wait any longer, they will be at the foot of Wudang Mountain. Chapter 10. Coming to the Enemy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the eyes of everyone, Zhang Cuishan and his family are just hot cakes. As if whoever pries open their mouths will obtain the dragon-slaying sword and become the supreme martial arts master. Zhang Cuishan and his group consisted of only 5 people, along with Yin Susu, the woman, and Wei Bai and Zhang Wuji, the 2 children. This made the people blocking the way focus their energy on Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan. There are 2 riders blocking the way ahead. One rider is an old man with gray hair and long beards, empty hands, and the other rider is a woman in bright attire, wielding 2 knives. Wudang Zhu'er and Jianghu have met 2 of them, dare you ask their high names? Yu Lianzhou arched his hand at them. Zhang Cuishan, where is the Golden Lion King Xie Sun? Quickly reveal his whereabouts. The old man ignored Yu Lianzhou and shouted directly at Zhang Cuishan. What a big dog's courage! Yin Susu shouted out loud, Wuxia and Zhang Wuxia have been wandering the world for many years, practicing chivalry and righteousness, and creating a glorious reputation. You actually call them by their names. Have you lived in the dog's belly for these past few decades? Yu Lianzhou was a bit unhappy when she heard Yin Susu say this. She was trying to stop her, but was pulled by the guard wall beside her. Although this person is old, he has no understanding of human relationships and worldly wisdom. It's better to be scolded by Miss Yin. Wei Bi didn't like the stick in front of him. Yu Lianzhou hesitated for a moment without further obstruction. Humph, no matter how famous the 7 heroes of Wudang are, what does it have to do with me? The old man said disdainfully, Zhang Cuishan, if you don't reveal the whereabouts of the Golden Lion King Xie Sun, you won't be able to leave today. The old man finished speaking and took out the judge's pen hidden in his waist, holding it in his hand and posing for an attack. Zhang Cuishan saw that the 2 judge pens were in the shape of snake heads, and remembered his master's teachings many years ago. Goryeo had a Qinglong sect, and although they also used judge pens, the pen heads were actually in the shape of snake heads. Moreover, their moves were all fierce and vicious, and they took the next 3 routes. As long as he blocked his attack, he was not afraid anymore. Previously, Zhang Sanfeng only mentioned that the head of that sect had the surname Quan, and as for the name, he didn't know or want to know. I don't know what you and the Qinglong sect spring old man call each other. Zhang Cuishan planned to first inquire about the old man's background. The old man was surprised when he heard this. He didn't mention his sect or name in a single word. How could Zhang Cuishan know that he came from Goryeo? Not bad, I am Quan Jiannan. Quan Jiannan waved his judge's pen and said, if you quickly reveal the whereabouts of the Golden Lion King, I will naturally let you go. This matter is of great significance. I need to first report to my mentor and ask him to make a decision, Zhang Cuishan replied with a smile. Okay. Toast, don't eat, fine. I'm here to learn the martial arts skills of Wudang sect. Quan Jiannan flew off his horse and stood on the ground with a 4-foot-tall figure, as if an ordinary person was bending over. Old man Wu, don't bend over anymore. Zhang Wuxia's martial arts are unparalleled, and you still need to take them seriously, Wei Bi said, pointing to Quan Jiannan. Wei Bai's words immediately made everyone present burst into laughter. Quan Jiannan is a guest of the Sanjiang gang, who was personally invited by the leader of the Sanjiang gang to Bangzi Island. Therefore, he cheers and drinks to the ordinary gang members as if he were using slaves. Everyone didn't argue with the leader for his face, but now there is an opportunity to laugh at him, and no one intends to miss it. Even Yu Lianzhou and Zhang Cuishan were amused by a few words from Wei Bai, and Yin Susu and Zhang Wuji burst out laughing. Quan Jiannan's face turned red from the words of Wei Bai and the laughter of everyone. His left sleeve swayed and several snake-shaped darts flew towards Wei Bai. Be careful. Yu Lianzhou spoke out to remind him that his long sword was about to be unsheathed to stop the few darts for Wei Bai. However, he saw Wei Bai calmly and motionless. With a light lift in his right hand, a judge's pen appeared in his hand and flew the snake-shaped darts flying in front of him. Ah! A few screams came, and the darts flew onto several members of the Sanjiang gang. Seeing this situation, Quan Jiannan also felt a little relieved in his heart. Let you make fun of me and taste the bitterness. Despicable. Zhang Cuishan scolded Quan Jiannan when he saw him throwing a dart at the guard wall, and then shook his iron and silver hook to attack Quan Jiannan. The judge's pen in Zhang Cuishan's hand was bought casually as he passed by the blacksmith's shop, although it was not as convenient as the pen he lost at sea. After all, there was a weapon in use. The 7 heroes of Wudang were taught by Zhang Sanfeng to be chivalrous and righteous, with a humble personality. Therefore, they had to resort to violence against others. This time, Zhang Cuishan was disgusted by Quan Jiannan's behavior and could no longer bear it. Don't be fooled by Quan Jiannan, who is over 4 feet tall, but his body is quite agile, jumping up and down, and flashing left and right. Zhang Cuishan watched as Quan Jiannan, who was jumping up with his own nose high, was so active. He drew a silver hook to protect his acupoints, guarding them without attacking, to observe the opponent's movements. Don't look, don't know, I'm scared at first glance. As my master said, Quan Jiannan's judges have 3 strokes and a vest, which is different from the experts in the Central Plains. His strokes are particularly unconventional, although ruthless, they are not to be feared. Zhang Zuishan pretended to be flustered, only protecting the acupoints of the governor vessel and the gallbladder meridian of the foot Xiaoyang, while Quan Jiannan's dual strokes became increasingly swift. Seeing that his moves no longer had any other innovative changes, Zhang Zuishan did not have the nature to play with him. He swung the silver hook in his hand, hooked onto the snake head of Quan Jiannan's judge's pen, and then the judge's pen quickly hit Quan Jiannan, using the last vertical stroke of the center character in the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber technique. Quan Jiannan instantly felt that the acupoint on his back and soul had been touched, and then to the yang, tendon contraction, center, spine. To the changqiang, he was touched on every acupoint of his governor meridian. Just now, Quan Jiannan, who was still full of anger, feels like a deflated ball, limping to the ground. It's okay, the 7 heroes of Wudang really live up to their reputation, sighed Quan Jiannan. He thought that people in the Central Plains liked to exaggerate, and it wasn't a big deal for Zhang Zuishan to become famous at a young age. However, he didn't expect that his final move was as fast as a spark, leaving him with no fighting ability, and he even used the acupoints he had studied throughout his life. Quan Jiannan finally realized that his martial arts skills, which he claimed to be Kanyan Goryeo, were like weak chickens in the Central Plains. Even if he was apprenticed to Zhang Zuishan, his level would probably be poor. Everyone, retreat. Judge Zhang Zuishan pointed his pen at Quan Jiannan's neck and said to the crowd surrounding him. Everyone, stand shoulder to shoulder. To Zhang Zuishan's surprise, the woman in the glamorous attire didn't care about Quan Jiannan's life or death. She waved her double swords and charged towards Zhang Zuishan, while all the members of the Sanjiang gang surrounded her. Although Zhang Zuishan, Yu Lianzhou, and Wei Bi did not pay much attention to the small shrimp in front of them, their large number posed a significant threat to Zhang Wuji. Therefore, the 4 of them surrounded Zhang Wuji in the center and prepared to take action to teach these ignorant Sanjiang gang members a lesson.